You are listening to stories that cannot be forgotten. Here lies pain, betrayal, and the strength born from darkness. Subscribe so you won't miss the next chapters. More stories await, impossible to turn away from. Sweet Revenge, a matter of inches. The metal railing was cold and slick under Sarah Dawson's palm, the early October drizzle misting her hair as she hauled herself and her daughter's wheelchair up the cracked concrete ramp. Not a real ramp, Sarah thought bitterly, her shoulder screaming in protest. Just a brutalist afterthought, poured decades ago at an angle that defied physics and basic human decency. 1 inch of clearance. That's all Chloe needed between the armrests of her lightweight titanium chair and the flaking brick walls bracketing this architectural insult masquerading as an accessible entrance to Jefferson Middle School. 1 inch. And today, wedged tight, the right wheel caught on a protruding chunk of mortar. The chair lurched, and Chloe's sharp intake of breath was a knife in Sarah's heart. "Mom, stop!" Chloe's voice, usually bright with the resilience of her 14 years, held a tremor of panic and embarrassment. Students streamed past the real entrance, a broad, welcoming staircase 20 feet away, oblivious or deliberately ignoring the daily struggle happening in the side alley designated for special access. Sarah gritted her teeth, planting her sensible loafer firmly against the wall for leverage. With a grunt born of pure fury and maternal desperation, she wrenched the chair free. The scrape of metal on concrete echoed harshly in the damp air. Chloe slumped slightly, her cheeks flushed, avoiding Sarah's eyes. That familiar cocktail of helpless rage and protective fire flooded Sarah's veins. This wasn't just inconvenient, it was degrading. It was a daily reminder that her brilliant, funny, artistic daughter was seen as an afterthought by the very system funded by their tax dollars to serve all citizens. "Okay, sweetie, okay," Sarah breathed, forcing calm into her voice as she finally maneuvered them onto the marginally level hallway floor inside. "You good?" Chloe nodded, adjusting her backpack. "Yeah, just later, pick me up at the front, okay? Mrs. Henderson said she'd help me down the stairs. It's easier." The quiet resignation in her daughter's voice was worse than the panic. "Front door," Sarah promised, her jaw tight. She kissed Chloe's forehead, the familiar scent of her apple shampoo, a stark contrast to the sour taste of injustice in her mouth. "Have a good day. Love you." "Love you too, Mom." Chloe wheeled herself down the hall, head held high, navigating the crowded corridor with practiced ease. Sarah watched her go, pride warring with a simmering fury that had been building for months, years, really. Since the diagnosis of Chloe's spinal muscular atrophy at age 7, Sarah had become an unwilling expert on navigating bureaucratic indifference. But this specific battle against the monolithic inertia of the Brookhaven County administration, this felt different. This felt personal. This felt like war. Sarah Dawson wasn't a warrior by nature. At 45, she was a pragmatic survivor. Divorced for 8 years, she'd built a respectable, if unspectacular, career as a freelance public relations consultant, specializing in helping small nonprofits punch above their weight. She knew how to craft a message, find an angle, leverage small advantages. Her life was a carefully calibrated act of balancing Chloe's needs, her demanding work, the upkeep of their modest Cape Cod on the outskirts of Brookhaven, and the constant low-grade hum of exhaustion. She favored comfortable sweaters, kept her dark blonde hair in an efficient bob, and her idea of excitement was finishing a crossword puzzle before her second coffee cooled. Revenge wasn't in her vocabulary. Until now. The final straw hadn't just been the ramp, though that was the daily indignity. It was the letter. Arriving 6 weeks ago in crisp county letterhead, it was a masterpiece of bureaucratic gaslighting signed by one Commissioner Richard Evans. Dear Ms. Dawson, Re-accessibility concerns. Jefferson Middle School, Ref ADA BH 7783. Thank you for your continued communication regarding accessibility modifications at the above-referenced facility. The Brookhaven County Department of Public Works Facilities has conducted a thorough review, see attached report BH Fac 2023-1114, and determined that the existing ingress-egress points meet current ADA compliance standards as interpreted by our legal counsel. While we acknowledge your personal experience suggests potential challenges, the county maintains that the structures are compliant within the scope of existing regulations and allocated maintenance budgets. Proposed alterations, including widening the designated ramp access point or modifying the main entrance, fall outside currently approved capital improvement projects for the foreseeable future. See 5-year capital plan, FY 24-28, available on the county website. We appreciate your understanding as we strive to serve all Brookhaven residents within our fiscal constraints. Sarah had read it 3 times, the sterile legalese dissolving into one clear message. Shut up and deal with it. Your daughter isn't worth the money. The attached report was a single page citing outdated guidelines and vague assurances. The 5-year plan allocated millions for repaving the Commissioner's favorite golf course parking lot and renovating the historic but rarely used County Courthouse Rotunda. Not a dime for making a public school truly accessible. That letter wasn't just a denial, it was a dismissal. It crystallized years of smaller battles. The inaccessible playground equipment Chloe could only watch from the sidelines, the constant fights for appropriate classroom accommodations met with sighs and delays, the patronizing tones of county clerks when Sarah dared to question procedures. Richard Evans, with his perfectly coiffed silver hair and expensive suits, his smug pronouncements in the local paper about fiscal responsibility and streamlining services, embodied the arrogant, uncaring face of the county administration. He lived in Harmony Hills, Brookhaven's most exclusive gated community, far removed from the cracked sidewalks and struggling schools in neighborhoods like Sarah's. Sarah crumpled the letter in her fist, the paper crackling like dry bones. Understanding curdled into something cold, hard, and dangerous, sweet revenge. The phrase surfaced from some dark, untapped reservoir within her. Not violence, not pettiness, but something precise, undeniable, and utterly devastating. She wouldn't scream. She wouldn't beg. She would dismantle them, brick by bureaucratic brick. The first phase was reconnaissance. Sarah Dawson, PR strategist, went to work. She immersed herself in the labyrinthine Brookhaven County website, downloading budgets, meeting minutes, procurement records, and ethics disclosures. She filed formal Freedom of Information Act, FOIA requests for everything related to Jefferson Middle School's accessibility assessments, the contracts for recent county projects, especially that golf course parking lot, and Commissioner Evans's travel and expense reports. The county clerk's initial reluctance melted under Sarah's calm, persistent, and meticulously documented requests. Nights became research marathons, fueled by strong coffee and righteous anger. Chloe, sensing her mother's intense focus, quietly did her homework nearby, occasionally asking, "Finding anything good, Mom?" Sarah's dining table disappeared under stacks of paper, her laptop screen glowing with spreadsheets and timelines. She discovered the beautiful, brutal truth about bureaucracies. They generate paperwork, and paperwork often contains inconvenient truths. Buried in a subcommittee footnote, She found a DPW engineer's internal memo questioning the Jefferson ramp's slope compliance. Evans had dismissed it as non-essential commentary. She cross-referenced contracts and found that the paving company awarded the golf course job, Premier Asphalt Solutions, had contributed significantly to Evans's last campaign fund. The Harmony Hills development, Evans's pet project constantly featured in his re-election materials, had received expedited permitting and county-funded infrastructure upgrades, sidewalks wide enough for golf carts naturally, all perfectly ADA compliant. The hypocrisy was breathtaking, the injustice quantifiable. Phase 2. Building the arsenal. Sarah needed more than her own righteous fury. She needed allies and evidence. She started quietly, subtly. At Chloe's next physical therapy appointment, she mentioned the ramp struggle to Brenda, the warm-hearted PT who'd known Chloe for years. Brenda sighed. "Oh, honey, it's not just you. Old Mr. Henderson down my street uses a walker. Can't get to the bus stop because the curb cut is blocked by that overgrown holly bush the county refuses to trim. Called them 6 times. Brenda knew others, a veteran with a prosthetic leg struggling with the library doors, a young mother with a double stroller who couldn't navigate the uneven pavers downtown. Sarah started a list, not a petition, too easily ignored. A dossier. Names, addresses, specific obstacles, dates reported, county response, or lack thereof. She recorded short, discreet audio testimonials on her phone with permission. She didn't frame it as an attack. She framed it as documenting the issues properly to present a stronger case. Then, the visuals? Armed with her phone and a cold determination, Sarah documented the county's failures, not just Chloe's ramp. She captured Mr. Henderson's blocked curb cut, the library door that required Herculean strength to open, the treacherous crosswalk timings that left slower pedestrians stranded, the public park bathrooms labeled accessible, with stalls too narrow for even a standard wheelchair. She filmed Chloe attempting the Jefferson ramp again, the grimace of effort, the scrape of metal, the sheer, unnecessary difficulty of it. She kept the camera steady, letting the images speak. Chloe's determined face, the indifferent brick wall, the smooth, wide staircase just feet away. She titled the raw footage folder, Accessibility Audit. She discovered the Brookhaven County Citizens Forum, a somewhat sleepy Facebook group mostly used for lost pets and complaints about potholes. Sarah began posting, not with anger, but with factual concern. Has anyone else had trouble with the crosswalk timing at Maple and 5th? Took over 3 minutes to change yesterday. Almost got caught in traffic with my daughter. The responses trickled in, then flowed. Others had similar experiences. She shared links to the official ADA guidelines, contrasting them with Brookhaven's realities. She became a reliable source of information, not a rabble-rouser. People started tagging the official Brookhaven County page. The county's social media intern responded with generic platitudes. "Thank you for your feedback. We will look into this." Sarah screenshot every exchange. Phase 3, the opening salvo. Sarah knew a frontal assault on Evans would fail. He'd dismiss her as a disgruntled parent. She needed to undermine his foundation first. She crafted a series of meticulously researched, anonymously sourced blog posts on a newly created platform, Brookhaven Watchdog. The first post, titled Priorities Pavement. Where do your tax dollars really go? Compared the cost per square foot of the Harmony Hills sidewalk upgrades, lavish decorative pavers, versus the cost of widening one school ramp, modest concrete. It highlighted the Premier Asphalt contract and the campaign contribution, posing questions, not accusations. Is this the most responsible use of limited public funds? She used photos from her accessibility audit, carefully cropping faces to protect privacy, but showing the stark obstacles. She seeded the blog link subtly in the comments section of local news articles about county spending, in the Citizens Forum group, emailed it to local reporters she knew from her PR days with a simple note. Thought this analysis might be of interest, given recent discussions about infrastructure. She used a VPN. Sarah Dawson, mild-mannered freelancer, was nowhere near it. The blog didn't go viral, but it rippled. People shared it. Comments piled up expressing outrage and sharing similar stories. A local online news outlet, the Brookhaven Bulletin, picked up the story, doing their own basic fact-checking, which confirmed Sarah's numbers. They ran a piece. Residents questioned county spending amid accessibility concerns. They quoted the anonymous blog and frustrated citizens. They even got a bland, defensive quote from a county spokesperson. All projects undergo rigorous review and prioritization based on need and available resources. Evans, appearing on the local evening news, chuckled condescendingly. Look, we have a process. We have budgets. We can't please everyone instantly. This anonymous blogger clearly has an axe to grind. We focus on the big picture for the entire county's prosperity. He gestured expansively towards a model of Harmony Hills Phase 2. Sarah watched, sipping herbal tea, a small, cold smile touching her lips. He'd taken the bait. He'd dismissed the concerns. He'd looked arrogant. Phase 3 was a success. The narrative was shifting. Phase 4, mobilization. The bulletin article gave Sarah's dossier legitimacy. She reached out to the people on her list, now dozens strong. The bulletin is interested in our experiences. Would you be willing to speak with a reporter or let them use your story? Most agreed. The human face of the bureaucratic failure became undeniable. The paper ran a follow-up. The human cost of Brookhaven's broken promises. Residents speak out on accessibility. It featured Mr. Henderson, the veteran, the young mother, and Chloe. Not by name initially, Sarah protected Chloe fiercely, but as a local middle school student who faces a daily obstacle course just to enter her school. The photo accompanying the online article was Sarah's shot of the Jefferson ramp, the scrape marks visible on the wall. Sarah organized, not a protest march, too easily painted as disruptive, a county accessibility audit day. She encouraged people to document their specific local obstacles, broken elevators in county buildings, inaccessible polling places, dangerous bus stops, and post them to social media using Brookhaven Access Now, tagging the county and local media. On the designated Saturday, the hashtag exploded. Hundreds of photos and short videos flooded in, painting a damning picture of systemic neglect across the entire county. The bulletin ran a live blog. Even the larger regional paper took notice. The sheer volume was impossible to ignore. Sarah, operating behind the scenes, fed specific, verifiable examples to sympathetic council members who were not part of Evans's inner circle. Councilwoman Maria Rodriguez, whose district included Jefferson Middle School, and who had a nephew with cerebral palsy, became a vocal ally. She started demanding answers in public meetings, armed with Sarah's meticulously compiled data. The pressure mounted. Evans was visibly rattled at the next Board of Commissioners meeting. The chamber was packed. Sarah sat near the back, anonymous in the crowd, heart pounding like a war drum. Evans tried his usual bluster, talking over Rodriguez, citing budgets and procedures. But Rodriguez was prepared. She held up printouts of the Brookhaven Access Now photos. She quoted the DPW engineer's buried memo about Jefferson's ramp. She questioned the Premier Asphalt contract timeline versus Evans's campaign filings. "Commissioner Evans," Rodriguez said, her voice cutting through his sputtering, "the residents aren't asking for the moon. They're asking for basic dignity and access guaranteed by federal law. They're asking why Harmony Hills gets gold-plated sidewalks while our children risk injury just going to school. They're asking why their concerns, documented over and over, are met with form letters and budget excuses. When does their prosperity factor into the county's big picture?" The room erupted in applause. Evans's face was puce. He slammed his gavel, declaring the discussion tabled due to time constraints. But the damage was done. The local news led with the confrontation. Evans looked defensive, out of touch, and crucially incompetent. Phase 5. The Kill Shot. Sarah had saved the best for last. Her deep dive into Harmony Hills hadn't just revealed preferential treatment. It had uncovered a ticking bomb. Buried in environmental impact reports and zoning variance applications, she found discrepancies related to protected wetlands on the edge of the development. Evans had aggressively pushed through the variances, overriding concerns from the county's own Environmental Review Board. His chief of staff, a key ally, had curiously purchased a large parcel of land adjacent to the development just months before the variances were approved. The land value had since quadrupled. It reeked of backroom deals and insider profiteering, but proving direct corruption was hard. Sarah needed leverage. Her years in PR had taught her about pressure points. Evans was vain. He craved recognition, legacy. Harmony Hills was his legacy project, and he was having an affair. Sarah hadn't set out to find that. It surfaced during her exhaustive trawl through his heavily redacted expense reports. Patterned weekend conference trips coinciding with social media posts by a much younger, recently divorced real estate agent, Lacey Cole, showing her at the same luxury resorts. Coincidental dinners in the city. Lacey Cole also happened to be the agent listing several high-end properties in Harmony Hills. Sarah filed more FOIAs, this time for communications between Evans's office and specific real estate agencies regarding county land sales near Harmony Hills. The responses were slow, heavily redacted, but the pattern was suggestive. Sarah didn't want to expose the affair crudely. That was messy, personal, and potentially backfired. She needed Lacey Cole to see Evans as a liability, not an asset. Using a secure anonymous email service, Sarah sent Lacey a carefully curated package. Links to the damning news coverage, screenshots of the Brookhaven access, now outrage focusing on children and veterans, highlights of the mounting ethics questions swirling around Evans and Harmony Hills, and a subtle reminder of Lacey's own professional reputation tied to the development. The message was unsigned but clear. Your golden goose is about to be publicly plucked and roasted. His scandal will become yours. He's toxic. She included one final, seemingly innocuous document. A heavily redacted FOIA response hinting at communications between Evans's office and Lacey's agency about the protected wetlands parcels. The implication of potential legal exposure was potent. Sarah held her breath. This was the biggest gamble. 2 days later, an anonymous, encrypted email arrived in the inboxes of the Brookhaven Bulletin, the regional paper's investigative desk, Councilwoman Rodriguez, and the County Ethics Board. It contained unredacted versions of emails between Evans and his chief of staff discussing the wetland variances and the potential for significant private appreciation of adjacent land. It included financial records showing the chief of staff's land purchase. And it included a detailed timeline linking Evans's pressure on the review board to these private gains. The source was listed only as a concerned citizen watching the wetlands. The fallout was immediate and nuclear. The chief of staff resigned by lunchtime, citing personal reasons. The ethics board launched a formal investigation. The district attorney's office announced it was reviewing the matter. Reporters camped outside Evans's mansion in Harmony Hills. Lacey Cole's agency issued a statement severing all ties with Evans and emphasizing their commitment to ethical practices. Evans himself went into hiding, refusing all comment. The stench of corruption overshadowed everything. The final confrontation wasn't Sarah storming Evans' office. It was the next Brookhaven County Board of Commissioners meeting. Evans was conspicuously absent, citing health reasons. The atmosphere was electric. The agenda was dominated by the ethics investigation and, crucially, a vote on emergency funding for immediate accessibility fixes at several critical locations, including Jefferson Middle School. Sarah sat in the front row, Chloe beside her in her chair. They weren't hiding anymore. Councilwoman Rodriguez presented the funding proposal, citing the overwhelming public demand documented by Brookhaven Access, Now, and the moral imperative. The vote wasn't even close. It passed unanimously. The room broke into applause. Rodriguez walked over and shook Sarah's hand firmly. "Persistence pays off, Miss Dawson," she said, her eyes knowing. Sarah simply nodded, a lump in her throat. After the meeting, as they navigated the now buzzing hallway, Chloe looked up at her mom. "They're really going to fix the ramp?" "Yes, sweetie," Sarah said, her voice thick. "They really are." "Good." Chloe paused, maneuvering around a cluster of people. "You did it, Mom. You showed them." Sarah looked down at her daughter, the fierce intelligence in her eyes, the quiet strength that dwarfed any ramp. The cold fire of revenge that had fueled her for months softened, warmed, transmuted into something purer. Triumph, not just for Chloe, but for Mr. Henderson, the veteran, the young mother, everyone on her list. She hadn't destroyed Evans out of malice. She'd dismantled his indifference to protect what mattered. The sweetness wasn't in his downfall, but in the victory of dignity, access, and the quiet power of a mother who refused to be ignored. "We showed them, Chloe," Sarah corrected softly, placing a hand on her daughter's shoulder as they pushed open the heavy doors. Outside, the drizzle had stopped. The afternoon sun, weak but persistent, broke through the clouds, glinting off the puddles on the cracked asphalt where the real entrance would soon be rebuilt. Sarah took a deep breath of the rain-washed air. It tasted like possibility. The war wasn't over. Bureaucracies were slow beasts. But the first crucial battle was won. And the taste of that victory, hard-earned and deeply just, was the sweetest thing Sarah Dawson had ever known. She wheeled Chloe towards their car, not glancing back at the insult of a ramp. Its days were numbered. Ahead lay the front door,